I want you to imagine a moment. You know the exact one I'm talking about.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. So you're standing right outside this heavy glass conference room door, and you're about to walk in and give a presentation that could genuinely, like, make or break your entire year.
Or maybe you're sitting at a small desk just staring at the first blank page of a crucial career-defining exam.
Exactly. And your palms are sweating, your heart is just hammering against your ribs, pumping adrenaline into your bloodstream, and your thoughts are racing, screaming on this awful loop, like, what if I completely mess this up?
Yeah, your focus is entirely shattering before you even begin to do the thing you prepared so hard for.
It is such a universally humbling human experience, right?
It really is. I mean, that physical, visceral reaction to high stakes, that's just your sympathetic nervous system hijacking your brain.
The biological hijack.
Right. Your body is essentially sounding a primal alarm bell. It's telling you that you are in mortal danger, even if, that danger is just a slide deck in a room full of executives.
It's so crazy that our brains do that.
Well, from an evolutionary standpoint, the biological response is indistinguishable from being chased by a predator.
And that biological hijack is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today.
Absolutely.
Because our mission today is to completely deconstruct the mental systems of tennis champion Iga Świątek. We really want to understand how she, and by extension, how you can master the mind under that kind of intense spotlight pressure.
It's fascinating stuff.
It is. We're pulling all of this from an analysis of Świątek's system and her work with her sports psychologist, Daria Abramowicz. We're looking at how they've essentially built this blueprint for cognitive control.
Which is such an important framing. Because, to be honest, this isn't really a sports discussion at all.
No, not at all.
It's a psychological one. They use elite tennis as this sort of high-speed laboratory. But the findings, I mean, they apply to anyone who has to execute a difficult task when the stakes just feel unbearably high.
Yeah, and there's this insight in the source material that I think completely reframes how we look at elite success. And it kind of sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about today.
Oh, about talent.
Yes. At the absolute highest level of any field, whether that's professional sports, Fortune 500 business, the highest tiers of academia, talent, and training are essentially equal.
Right. Everyone has them.
Exactly. You don't get to the top without being wildly talented and putting in, your 10,000 hours of practice. So if everyone has a world-class forehand or a world-class intellect, what actually separates the absolute best from the rest?
It's a great question.
And it boils down to one thing, really. It's how they think when everything is on the line.
And a crucial distinction we need to establish early on here is the actual goal of this mental conditioning. Because I think people get this wrong.
How so?
Well, the objective isn't to become some sort of, fearless, unfeeling machine. The objective is to learn how to operate effectively while remaining completely inside of the pressure.
Okay, let's stop right there because that dismantles a massive misconception we have about high performance.
It really does.
We look at these champions, these elite performers who look like ice-cold killers out there, and we just assume they're built differently from the rest of us.
Right.
We assume their brains simply do not process fear.
Yeah, it's the pervasive myth of the fearless champion.
Yeah.
We watch them on a screen executing flawlessly, and we just assume they don't feel that tightening in the chest or that sudden flood of panic.
Right, they do.
The reality is exactly the opposite. Champions feel the exact same fear. Their amygdala, the fear center of the brain, it's firing just like yours or mine would.
Wow.
The biological chemical cascade is identical. The difference is purely in the cognitive response to that chemical cascade.
Yeah.
They just don't let the fear dictate their physical actions.
Okay, I have to push back here a little bit because this is where the theory always kind of hits a wall for people.
Sure, go for it.
If she is standing in a massive stadium and it's incredibly loud, thousands of people are scrutinizing her every single move, and her biology is just dumping adrenaline into her system, how does she actually stop the spiral?
It's hard.
It's not like you can just use logic to tell your brain to turn off the fear. If you just command yourself to stop being anxious, it usually makes you way more anxious.
You're touching on a well-documented psychological phenomenon there, actually. It's called ironic process theory.
Ironic process theory.
Yeah. Basically, when you actively try to suppress a thought or an emotion, like telling yourself, don't be nervous, your brain actually has to constantly monitor itself to ensure you aren't feeling nervous.
Oh, so it keeps checking in on the anxiety.
Exactly. Which ironically keeps the anxiety front and center in your mind. Fighting the emotion gives it more fuel. So what Swiatek does instead is utilize a concept we can think of as the gap.
The gap. Okay, how does that work in practice?
So instead of having an immediate knee-jerk reaction to a missed shot or a sudden surge of adrenaline, she trains to create this tiny, crucial gap between the stimulus, which is the feeling of panic, and her response to it.
Right.
She acknowledges the pressure. She feels the fear, but she observes it rather than absorbing it.
Observing, not absorbing.
Exactly. Because in that fraction of a second, she manages to keep her prefrontal cortex online. That's the logical decision-making part of the brain.
Got it.
So she stays stable inside the pressure rather than burning up all her cognitive bandwidth trying to pretend the pressure isn't there.
So it's the difference between feeling a wave of panic and immediately internalizing it by saying like, oh no, I'm panicking, this is terrible, everything is falling apart, versus feeling that exact same wave and saying, okay, my heart is beating fast, I'm experiencing anxiety right now. That is just a biological event happening in my body. Now, what is my next tactical move?
Precisely. The emotion is demoted, right?
Yeah.
It goes from being a dictator of her behavior to simply being a piece of information.
That's a great way to put it.
Yes, she allows the pressure to exist in the same room as her without letting it take the steering wheel.
I get the logic, I really do. But, I mean, understanding the gap sitting here in a quiet room is one thing. How do you actually force that gap open in real time?
When you're out on the court.
Right. When
Yeah.
the crowd is roaring, the clock is ticking down, and you just made a massive unforced error. A philosophical concept isn't going to save you in that exact moment. You need a physical mechanism to interrupt that biological hijack.
You absolutely do. And for Swiatek, that mechanism is a highly structured micro-ritual.
A micro-ritual.
Yeah. After almost every single point, whether she wins it with some brilliant shot or loses it by hitting the ball straight into the net, she performs a very specific, repeatable physical routine.
Yeah, I've seen her do this. She goes to her towel, she turns her back to the court, she pauses, and she takes this slow, deliberate breath.
Exactly.
She systematically slows her physical rhythm down, and she entirely lets go of the previous point.
And we really need to look at the neurobiology of why that works, specifically that breath. Because this isn't just that generic, take a deep breath to relax advice people throw around.
Right, there's actual science behind it.
A lot of science.
Yeah.
When she slows her breathing, specifically by making the exhale longer than the inhale, she is manually stimulating the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve.
Yes. That nerve runs from the brain down through the body, and it controls the parasympathetic nervous system.
Which is
The rest and digest system, the opposite of fight or flight.
Okay, so she is literally using her lungs to send a physical signal back up to her brain saying, hey, we are not being chased by a tiger right now. It is safe to calm down.
Yes. She is chemically forcing her heart rate to drop. She is hacking her own nervous system.
That is incredible.
It is. And the consistency of this ritual is what makes it so powerful. She doesn't just deploy it when she's losing and panicking. She does it when she wins a spectacular point, too.
Wait, really? What? When she wins?
Because a massive spike in dopamine and excitement can be just as distracting to your focus as a spike in cortisol and fear. The ritual acts as a hard reset for her entire system, bringing her back to baseline.
Okay, but even if she gets her heart rate under control physically, there's still the cognitive side of the equation because, the human mind is essentially a time machine.
That is so true.
We have this default mode network in our brains that just loves to constantly time travel. We jump backward to endlessly ruminate on our mistakes, agonizing over what we just did wrong.
Why did I hit that shot?
Exactly. Or we skip ahead to the future to imagine worst-case scenarios. If I lose this next point, I lose the game, then the match, then my ranking drops. We are mentally everywhere except the exact present moment.
And that mental time traveling is exactly why people crumble under pressure.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. When your mind is in the past or the future, you are completely disconnected from the task at hand. The physical micro-ritual, the pause, the vagal breathing, the physical turning away from the court, it forces her brain out of that time machine.
It grounds her.
It violently yanks her attention back to the present. She isn't thinking about the overall score. She isn't thinking about the championship trophy. She narrows her focus down to one singular thing, which is the execution of the next action.
Wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go ahead.
Reframing the moment so you only focus on the next action sounds great in theory. You tell yourself, hey, it's just geometry and physics. It's just hitting a yellow ball over a net.
Right.
But if losing that specific point means losing a Grand Slam final and a couple $1 million in prize money, how do you logically trick a highly intelligent brain into ignoring the glaring financial and career reality of the moment? Like the stakes are objectively higher.
Well, that's the thing. You aren't tricking the brain into ignoring reality. You are strictly managing your cognitive load.
Cognitive load.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The external stakes are high. But pressure, that internal crushing feeling of anxiety, it doesn't actually come from the event itself.
Where does it come from then?
It comes from the meaning we attach to the event in that specific moment. If you are standing on the baseline thinking, this swing defines my entire legacy, your cognitive load is so overloaded with narrative and meaning that your motor skills actually degrade.
Oh, wow. So you choke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Choking is essentially your brain being too overwhelmed by the narrative to properly instruct your muscles. Elite performers understand that while the outcome matters globally, thinking about the outcome locally, like during execution, is destructive.
So they just block it out entirely.
They strip away the narrative. They reduce the universe down to task-relevant cues. The spin of the ball, the position of their feet, the physical action of hitting the ball hasn't changed from practice to the finals. So they focus solely on the action, not the meaning of the action.
That makes a lot of sense. You are shrinking the world down to what you can actually control.
Yes, exactly.
But that leads to a much deeper psychological hurdle, I think. Because a breathing ritual and focusing on task-relevant cues, that only works if you genuinely, deep down, possess the ability to let go of mistakes quickly. If you just made a humiliating amateur error on global television, taking a long exhale isn't going to magically erase the sting unless your foundational mindset is already built for it. How does she actually maintain that level of detachment from failure?
This brings us to the core engine of her entire mental framework. And it's something Daria Abramowicz has focused heavily on with her. It is the concept of separating identity from performance.
We really need to unpack this because this applies to everyone listening, whether they play tennis or work in accounting.
Oh, 100%.
This is the difference between bombing a major project at work and thinking, I failed at this specific task, my strategy was flawed, versus thinking, I am a complete failure as a human being.
That distinction is everything. In psychology, there's a concept similar to this called cognitive diffusion.
Cognitive diffusion.
Okay. When people fuse their identity with their performance, their self-worth becomes entirely conditional. If they succeed, they feel valuable, worthy, and good. If they fail, they feel fundamentally inadequate.
That sounds exhausting.
It creates a deeply fragile psychological state. It's this massive emotional roller coaster where your sense of self is being violently tossed around by external results you can't entirely control.
And if your fundamental worth as a person is on the line every single time you step onto a court or walk into a boardroom, of course your amygdala is going to sound an alarm.
Right.
Your brain perceives failure not just as a lost tennis match, but as an actual existential threat to your identity. The fear of failure becomes paralyzing.
Precisely. Swiatek's system is built on the understanding that performance is temporary and highly variable. You will have bad days. You will make mistakes. But identity is intrinsic, deep, and completely unattached to the scoreboard.
But hold on, if her identity isn't tied to winning, doesn't she lose her competitive edge?
People ask that all the time.
Yeah, because if she doesn't care about the result on an identity level, why fight so hard to win? People often think you need that desperate hunger to be great.
It's a really common misconception that desperation fuels greatness. It might fuel short-term intensity, sure, but it leads to long-term burnout and anxiety.
Interesting.
When you decouple your identity from the outcome, you don't stop caring. You actually free yourself up to perform better. Because you aren't playing to protect a fragile ego, you remove the existential dread from the equation.
So you're not playing from a place of fear.
Right. You aren't playing to prove your worth to the world. You are playing purely to express your ability.
So mechanically, how does she process a brutal loss if her identity isn't tied to it?
She processes it purely as data. If she loses a match, she doesn't label herself a loser. The loss is just a feedback loop.
Just a feedback loop.
Yeah, it's an information set indicating that her current tactical strategy, or maybe her physical preparation, was insufficient for that specific opponent on that specific day.
Data, not defeat.
Exactly. It is something to analyze and learn from, not a heavy label to wear. It keeps her analytical rather than emotional when evaluating her own shortcomings.
That is such a liberating framework. Just imagine walking into that terrifying conference room we talked about at the beginning, or walking into that exam hall, and knowing deep in your bones that no matter what happens in the next hour, your fundamental value as a person is completely secure.
It changes everything.
It really does. Because it's just a data gathering exercise at that point.
Yeah.
It would be so much looser. You'd take more calculated risks. You'd be vastly more creative and present because that background hum of existential anxiety is just gone.
You would be operating in the gap we discussed earlier.
Yes.
But we have to make it clear, this level of cognitive control isn't an accident of birth. People aren't just born with this impenetrable mindset. It is a meticulously constructed, rigorously maintained system.
Right. This is the hidden layer of Swiatek's success. She treats mental training with the exact same discipline and intensity as her physical training. She doesn't just cross her fingers and hope to feel confident on match day. She actively builds the neural pathways for resilience. And having Daria Abramowicz traveling with her full-time gives her this massive advantage because they are constantly doing the reps on this mental machinery.
And it goes beyond just talking to a psychologist, too. She's constantly building what we can call mental depth.
Mental depth.
Yeah, she actively reads books on psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, and self-awareness. She utilizes tools like heart rate variability biofeedback.
Oh, the HRV stuff.
Exactly. She uses it to understand exactly how her body responds to stress. She understands that elite performance is deeply connected to how accurately you interpret situations and how intimately aware you are of your own cognitive biases.
Mental depth. I love that term. It's like having an incredibly deep bench in a sport, but all the players are inside your own head.
That's a brilliant way to look at it.
Because when one strategy isn't working or when panic starts to, bleed through the walls, you aren't left defenseless. You have this wealth of different psychological tools, frameworks, and perspectives to draw upon to get your brain back on track.
And if we synthesize this entire system, we can see how elegantly all these gears interlock.
Let's run through them.
Okay, so you have the breathing control, which serves as a physical brake for the nervous system, stopping the biological hijack.
Right.
Then you have the focus resets, which pull the mind out of the time machine and anchor it firmly in the present.
Yep.
You have process thinking, where you reduce cognitive load by focusing only on the very next action rather than the overwhelming outcome.
And then the foundation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As the bedrock of it all, you have identity separation, ensuring that failure is just data, not a threat to your existence.
Together, they build a mind that is incredibly difficult to break. Because true resilience isn't about avoiding the storm, right? It's about knowing how to navigate your own ship when the waves hit. And this brings it directly back to you listening right now. You don't have to be trying to win a Grand Slam to implement this architecture.
Not at all. The mechanics of pressure are entirely agnostic. They remain exactly the same, whether you are on center court, negotiating a salary, taking a medical board exam, or trying to manage a chaotic household.
The environment changes, but the human nervous system responds the exact same way.
Which means the blueprint is entirely transferable.
That's the best part. So the next time you feel that wave of absolute overwhelm, the next time you are standing outside that door and your sympathetic nervous system is screaming at you to run, do not fight the feeling.
Do not fight it.
Right. Do not tell yourself to stop being anxious. Pause. Create the gap. Take a deliberate breath where the exhale is longer than the inhale. Signal safety to your body. Pull your focus out of the catastrophic future and violently anchor it in the present moment.
Just shrink the world down.
Strip away the narrative. Remind yourself that this moment does not define your worth and only look at the very next step you need to take.
True cognitive control is not about magically removing the pressure of life. It's about training yourself to remain stable and functional inside of it.
So to recap our deep dive today, we've learned that the highest levels of success aren't separated by talent, but by how the mind operates under fire. We've seen that true control isn't the absence of fear, but the ability to observe the fear without letting it hijack your prefrontal cortex.
Right.
We've explored the biological power of resetting into the present moment and the vital importance of detaching our core identity from the immediate outcome, turning failure into nothing more than useful data.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, something that kind of pushes these concepts a step further.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spend so much of our lives and so much of our finite energy trying to design an existence that is completely free of pressure, stress, and friction.
Oh.
We think the ultimate goal is a perfectly smooth life. But what if that is entirely the wrong objective? What if instead of constantly trying to build a pressure-free life, which, let's face it, is impossible, we spent that energy building our own internal gap. What if we focus on training our minds to be comfortable, stable, and deeply present right in the middle of the storm?
That completely flips the script. Stop running from the storm and just learn how to stand in the rain.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We really hope this provided you with some concrete, actionable tools to take into whatever high-stakes moments you are facing in your own life. So whatever you're doing today, the next time you feel that heart start to race, take a slow breath. Let go of whatever just happened and just focus on your very next step. We'll catch you next time.